Hello everyone, welcome to Inconvenient Truths. I'm your host, Jennifer Zheng. Rumors that Xi Jinping has already lost power or is about to lose it have been going around for a long time, but recently the top American think tank Hudson Institute has taken this rumor to a whole new level. They've started seriously talking about how to get ready for a China after the communist era. Today, we are going to chat about what suggestions they've come up with and how I see these ideas. On July 16th, there was a seminar called After the Fall, Planning for Post-Communist China. It discussed how America should prepare for a time after the communist era. At the same time, the Hudson Institute put out a 128-page report titled China After Communism, Preparing for Post-CCP China. Just hearing those titles is enough to get you excited, right? But the main stuff in the seminar and this report is even more shocking. It straight up talks about sending American special forces to China after the CCP falls to help restore and keep order, and how to make sure biological weapon labs in China don't leak, and other explosive topics like that. The main editor of this report is Mao Yu, who is the director of China Center and Hudson Institute. He also hosted the seminar. I needed to point out that Mao Yu joined the Trump administration during Trump's previous term in office, serving as the China policy advisor to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. In that role, he advised the Secretary on all issues related to China, helped change U.S. policy toward China completely, and took part in key U.S. government meetings about major policies and actions regarding China. I remember that during his time as Mike Pompeo's advisor, the U.S. government first clearly said they should separate the CCP from the Chinese people. This idea made the CCP really mad and embarrassed, so they called Mike Pompeo a public enemy of humanity and branded Mao Yu a top traitor because he was born in China. Now, let's go over the main content of this report. First, the report thinks that China is facing complex structural changes that are seriously hitting the long-term sustainability of the communist regime. These challenges include an economic future that's getting more uncertain, a more hostile international environment, and a rigid governance system caused by Xi Jinping's concentration of political power, which can't adapt to changing realities, even though the CCP has handled various problems in the past. Now, the possibility of a sudden CCP collapse means we need to check if the international community is ready enough to deal with that. The report focuses on two core issues. First, how to handle all kinds of problems after the collapse, and second, how to help China make the transition and join the international community. The final goal is to turn a totalitarian country into a constitutional government, making the dream come true for many Chinese people, a country that respects democracy, the rule of law, and responds to what the people want. The authors of the report did analysis and suggestions in nine big areas. But before we dive into the details, let me introduce a great product that can significantly revive your eyes stress and improve your eye health. It is called WiseQuest eye patches. You know, traditional Chinese medicine has been passed down for thousands of years. Acupuncture points, once seen as mysterious and hard to explain in the West, have since been backed by modern science. This eye patch is a perfect example of combining Chinese wisdom with modern Western science. It uses carefully selected herbal ingredients applied directly to acupuncture points around the eyes. Within just 5 minutes, your eyes can feel refreshed and deeply moisturized. With regular use, it helps protect and improve your eye health over time. If you spend more than 6 hours a day looking at screens, which includes teens and even young kids, this is something you should be using regularly. Honestly, it's one of the best gifts you can give to yourself and your loved ones. I'll put the purchase link in the comments or description. Your support not only helps your family, it also helps me keep sharing more inconvenient truths. All right, let's get back to our topics today. First, after the CCP regime collapses, the U.S. should send special operations forces to help stabilize the situation in China, assist the transition government, and avoid a power vacuum and chaos spreading. This idea comes from the U.S. Office of Strategic Services, OSS, during World War II, which was the predecessor of the CIA. Back then, it worked side by side with the nationalist government in China to fight the Japanese army. So the first chapter of this report is titled OSS in China Again, the Role of U.S. Special Operations Forces After CCP Collapse. The report suggests that the role of a new strategic services office is to help break up the CCP and stabilize things. It will act in 3 phases. Phase 1, before the CCP falls, send messages to Chinese people, soldiers, and officials that CCP is not equal to China, drive a wedge between the CCP and the army or local officials, support exile communities to spread information, and expand political warfare operation with Taiwan. Phase 1, right when the CCP falls, set up diplomatic and military contacts with China's temporary government, help secure borders, stop labors like North Korea or Russia from interfering, help protect weapons of mass destruction facilities to prevent nuclear or biological weapons from leaking out, do humanitarian rescue operations, guide the Chinese army to break away from the party commands the gun model and turn into a national regular force. Phase 2, rebuilding period. After the help the transition government take apart political control mechanism from the CCP era, like political work systems in the army, military media, help set up free media and systems to reveal the truth, provide support for opening historic archives, rebuilding education content, and detoxifying thoughts, help China build order with rule of law and separation of military and civilians. The report stresses that special operations forces are not for fighting wars, but for building a peaceful order. Second, after the CCP regime falls, precisely strike biological weapon facilities. The author is Ryan Clark, an expert on biosecurity and strategic risk. Clark points out that the international community should focus on 3 clusters of CCP biological warfare facilities, including the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the Harbin Veterinary Research Institute, which has done various recombination experiments to create new strains of bird flu that can spread through the air, and the Kunming branch of the Chinese Academy of Medical Sciences, which has done Zika virus mutations and animal experiments to increase the virus harm to human brains and fetus. He stresses the CCP's biological research system is no longer just a public health system, but military assets hiding huge strategic risks. It has already gone international, for example, building corporate labs in Pakistan and other places. If these technologies flow to regimes or terrorist groups like Iran and North Korea, it will irreversibly change the global strategic balance. So we shouldn't have fantasies about reforming them, but must completely dismantle, destroy, or turn them into a civilian regulated system. Third, rebuilding China's financial system after the CCP falls. The researchers point out that under CCP rule, the financial system is highly centralized, predatory, and used as a political tool. Its nature isn't to serve the market and people, but to strengthen the CCP regime. So after the CCP falls, the financial system must be rebuilt from the ground up, not just patched up. For this, China's new government must start 4 big reform pillars right after the start of political transition, including capital reorganization, refusing illegal or non-transparent debts from the CCP era, privatizing state assets, and decentralization. The authors stress that for China to truly become a market-based economy, it must first remove Communist Party control, break up monopolies, and end financial authoritarianism. Only then can it build a system based on the rule of law, transparency, and fair competition. This would not just be a deep correction of past mistakes. It would be a historic rebuilding of the entire system. Fourth, securing Chinese assets in America, written by famous China expert Gordon Chang. Gordon Chang points out that the CCP has already deeply infiltrated America's economy, finance, and tech industries. Around the time the CCP falls, Chinese assets might be used for intelligence penetration, economic destruction, or capital flight. He suggests freeze assets with CCP background, set up an assets review committee, create a China Democratic Transition Fund, and review Chinese listed companies and enterprise ownership. Frozen Chinese CCP regime assets will be given back to China's legitimate government in the future. The core of the strategy is that America can't see China as a whole enemy. We should clearly separate assets controlled by the CCP, legitimate assets owned by Chinese civilians, Chinese companies, and people who have defected or cooperated. This not only helps stabilize society, but also helps win trust and cooperation from China's new regime and people. Gordon Chang also points out that America should clearly call for all American companies and citizens should withdraw from China. Reasons include CCP collapse might cause assets to be taken over, wealth cleansing, or political revenge. Local officials might set themselves up as kings and plunder foreign capital into information blackouts, and violent conflicts will make the business environment super unstable. Safety of companies and personnel can't be guaranteed. Fifth, deconstructing the CCP's military and police system. The core idea is that China's new government must quickly control and restructure three armed forces: the People's Liberation Army, the Armed Police, and the militia, which have long been the CCP's tools for maintaining stability and suppression. If not handled in time, they'll become breeding grounds for turmoil, civil war, or coups. Reorganization has three principles. One, depoliticize, from party's army to nation's army. Two, professionalize and streamline. Three, internationalize and focus on peaceful missions. The report says that removing the Communist Party's control over the military is one of the key factors for a successful democratic transition in China. If handled properly, this could lay the foundation for building a new military that is legal, professional, and transparent in a post-CCP China. Sixth, China's secret police and intelligence system. The report points out that the CCP's security and intelligence systems are huge and concentrated under party control. Core agencies include the Ministry of State Security, the Police Security System, Military Security Departments, and the United Front System that manages overseas influence networks. If the CCP collapses, these organizations could fall into a power vacuum, breaking apart into rival factions, infiltrating each other, and even turning into warlord forces or underground criminal groups. To prevent these risks, China's new government should immediately sell and take over these systems' assets, learn from Eastern Europe, open their archives of suppressing people for victims to check, strictly ban their personnel from holding public office in the new government to prevent secret police revival, should set up small-scale national intelligence agencies supervised by the elected government. Seventh chapter, China's autonomous regions and human rights. This part focuses on possible ethnic conflicts and humanitarian disasters that might break out in China's 5 ethnic minority autonomous regions after the CCP regime falls, and discusses how the international community and China's new government should design intervention and protection mechanisms. This is also the part of the whole report with the most humanitarian spirit and international law perspective. The report suggests when making the constitution, including principles of multi-ethnic equality and autonomy, ban Han priority Mandarin-forced education policies, push for ethnic regional autonomy reform from symbolic divisions to real local governance mechanisms, provide official apologies and institutional compensation to historic victims groups like Falun Gong, house churches, Tibetan Buddhist Muslims, etc. 8th chapter, How to Initiate a Truth and Reconciliation Process in China. This is a chapter in the whole report with the most moral and historic depths. The authors point out that we should set up a Chinese version of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to reveal the systematic persecutions and atrocities under the CCP rule in a peaceful, fair way. This is also the source of legitimacy for China's new government. Priorities cases include Cultural Revolution purges, June 4th Tiananmen massacre, persecutions of Falun Gong practitioners, Christians, Tibetans, Uyghurs, and other religious or ethnic groups, Xinjiang's re-education camp system, CCP official media and education brainwashing system, abuses by national security and public security systems. The authors also suggest building a memorial to Chinese victims at Tiananmen Square and doing institutional reforms to rebuild the rule of law and press freedom and push for removing political ideology from history education. 9th chapter, A Constitutional Convention Plan. It suggests that after the CCP falls and a transition government is set up, hold a national constitutional convention to make a new constitution to build a democratic, rule of law, sustainable national institutional framework. The authors think whether China's transition succeeds ultimately depends on a free constitution made by representatives elected by the people. I personally think that this kind of research and discussion is really necessary. I don't know how many people know this, but a few days before the 1989 Tiananmen massacre on May 31st, Deng Xiaoping said in a talk with Chinese top leaders Li Peng and Yao Yilin, imagine what would happen if China fell into chaos. Once civil war breaks out, blood will flow like rivers. Where will human rights be then? In civil war, each force will control a place. Production will drop. Traffic will stop. Refugees won't be in millions or tens of millions, but hundreds of millions flowing out of China. This talk was later included in the book, The Tiananmen Papers. The CCP's own Communist Party network paper records that on January 18, 1990, after the Tiananmen massacre, Deng Xiaoping said similar things when meeting Hong Kong's richest man Li Ka-shing, that China can't be chaotic or a refugee crisis would hit the whole world. I believe this kind of blackmail talk really scared a lot of Western politicians. So for so many years, many Western governments have been supporting the CCP until they raised the CCP into a monster that can threaten the whole world. Actually, the CCP is the biggest source of chaos and disaster in China. I believe that after the Communist Party collapses, Chinese people themselves have enough wisdom and ability to rebuild a new China without the Communist Party. Of course, I fully support the US government actively helping the Chinese people rebuild their country and restore the morals, culture, and values that have been deeply damaged by the CCP. But even more important is helping the Chinese people break free from the CCP's control. Without taking down the Communist Party first, everything else is just talk on paper. It won't mean much. Do you agree with my views? I'd love it if you could leave a comment with your great thoughts. Well, that's all for today. Once again, please consider supporting me by purchasing the wonderful product I recommended earlier or by visiting my website at jenniferzengblog.com to sign up for a membership or make a donation. Your support makes it possible for me to continue telling the inconvenient truths. Thank you and see you next time.